Hello again. In the last video, we set up the basic collection handling functionality and added the collection sphere to the player pawn. In this video, we're going to actually dive into handling the actual collection. Now, this is going to involve a lot more client-server communication. So, whereas in previous videos, we followed fairly closely to Epic's version of this tutorial. Typically, we were just adding authority guards around key areas of our code. Now, however, things are going to start to diverge slightly as we begin to look at the client-server communication and we get a little more technical with networking. So in order to prepare for that, I'll spend just a minute talking about the situation and our approach before we dive into the implementation. So earlier, to put it another way, most of the things that were happening, like when we were spawning pickups, that was all done on the server, with the server just acting unilaterally. Or, as in the case of player movement, that functionality was pre-packaged. In other words, we got it for free with the project template. But now, we are going to have to handle the client-server interactions more directly. So, I'm going to illustrate with a slide, and we'll just walk through this theoretically, and then we'll dive into the actual implementation. I will say that I'm breaking this into two separate videos. So in the first video, we're going to be handling the character collecting pickups, and in the next video, we'll handle the pickups being collected. So let's take a look at how we're going to collect pickups on the network. So we have spawn volumes, and they're dropping these various pickups, batteries right now, into the world. And so, as a client, suppose I'm running around and I want to pick up one of these batteries. So I click a button, which we haven't defined yet, but we will in this video. So I click a button that says, I would like to collect pickups. Now, the way this works is, and this is fairly standard practice, the client says, I want to do a thing, and then sends that request over to the server. The server then will actually process that request. So when I say collect pickups, what's really going to happen is it's going to call the server version and say, hey server, please collect some pickups for me. Then on the server side, that function call will be executed, that RPC, that remote procedure call, will be executed on the server side, and it will determine if the client can collect pickups. So maybe check to see if the client is dead, maybe check to see if there's actually overlapping pickups nearby, and otherwise execute some logic, maybe add some energy to the player, which we'll do later on, or something else, and then decide that yes, a battery was picked up. And so having done all the logic on the server side, it's also going to notify the clients again, or broadcast back out to the clients that, hey, this thing was done for you. So that's the part that we'll actually see happening later on. But in this video, we're going to handle this client-server communication to actually do the collecting of pickups. So let's go ahead and dive into the actual implementation and get to some code. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Visual Studio, and we're going to start right here in the character class, and we're going to define the collecting pickups pieces that I mentioned looking at the slide. Now this is a protected stuff, because we're not going to be doing this outside of the class. So it'll be a function call that's executed by a button press. So we're going to set up our first function, which is to collect pickups, and this will happen on the client. So this is a U function. It's blueprint callable. You might want to call it from without a button press for some reason, and we'll put it in our pickups category. And now this is the entry point for collecting pickups. So it is called when the player presses a key to collect some pickups. And as I said, it is actually going to call the server version. So we're going to create a server version. So this is server collect pickups. Now, whereas some keywords like the _ implementation are keywords required by code, this prepending this function with the word server is just a convention. I use that to sort of designate or denote where things are happening. So I know that this is happening on the server. I just call it server version. So this is also a U function. However, we're not going to be calling this from Blueprint or anything like that. This is actually a reliable function that works only on the server. So it's server reliable and with validation. Now let's talk for just a minute about those. First, we want to make sure that we know this is called on the server to actually process the collection of pickups. Now let's take a quick look at this uFunction macro. So what we've done is we've noted that this is a reliable function call, so it's guaranteed to happen. It'll happen in order. It only runs on the server, so it won't happen on the clients. And the with validation tag is a required tag now that basically means there's going to be two separate calls. And one of those is a call to validate, and one of those is a call to implementation. And we will look at those in more detail when we get to that in the implementation momentarily. So let me just flip over to the CPP file and we'll start writing the code for the actual implementation of both of these functions. Now on the client side, this is going to be very straightforward. As I said, we are not doing anything exciting here. If you were firing a weapon or something like that, you might do more processing. Hold on, it's hard to talk and type. Okay. If you were firing a weapon, maybe on the client side you would check to see if you have ammo or something. You would do some optimizations. Again, this is something that's covered in more detail in the EPIC's Blueprint networking tutorial, so I highly recommend and hope that you've actually gone through that prior to arriving here. But suffice to say, there could be more work done on the client side before requesting that the server do things. But for us, we are just going to ask the server to collect pickups. And again, we don't actually do the collecting as a client, we just ask the server to do it for us. So, hey server, collect pickups. We're going to ask the server to do that. Now, on the server side, there are those two things that have to happen. The first is the validate. So the way it works is a function is called, it returns a bool. It's a NMP game character. Server collect pickups. And this first one is appended with the underscore validate. And what happens here is this function is called before the actual implementation function is called. It must return true or false. If it returns true, that means we're okay to proceed and the server will execute the implementation function. If for some reason it returns false, then you have an opportunity to do something like detect that there's bad data in their parameters or maybe hacking or cheating, and so you could disconnect clients and stuff. But for the most part, we don't have anything to check here, so we're just going to simply return true. That means our implementation will happen, and that is right here. So that's void a NMP game character, network multiplayer game character, server collect pickups underscore implementation. Okay, now you'll also notice that I never actually declared these in the header file, and that's because you don't have to. You simply define those in your CPP file and you're good to go. So both of these validate and implementation functions. Now on the implementation side, the first thing of course we're going to do, even though this is be called on a server, we're still going to go ahead and do our authority guard. If for no other reason, then somebody coming along to read the code will know that this is how it's supposed to work. And here we're going to actually write the implementation of collecting the pickups from the character standpoint. And so that is going to be a process whereby we will simply get all the overlapping actors that are overlapping with our collection sphere, store those in an array, check to see if any of those happen to be batteries, and if they are, then, or in our case, any pickup, any type of pickup. If they are, then it will call the collection piece, which we'll tackle in the next video. So I'm going to go ahead and write this implementation. If you've actually done this already in the Epix version of this tutorial, this is all going to be pretty much straightforward. You've already seen this. So if you've not, then follow right along. So let's get all the overlapping actors and store them in an array. I'm going to just write this out as pseudocode, similar to what they did in the Epix version of this tutorial. Then we're going to look at each actor inside the collection sphere, and if it is a pickup and it is valid and active, so remember we have the active checks that we can do, then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and collect the pickup. So in that case, we're going to deactivate it. So we'll collect the pickup and deactivate it. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill this in. So the first thing we're going to do is create this array. It'll be a T array of actors, collected actors, and we're going to get that by going to our collection sphere. Whoops, not that. Our collection sphere and calling get overlapping actors, and we pass in the output that we want. So that'll call that and get us the list, and now we need to go through that. So we iterate through that with a loop from 0 to actors.num and increment each time. And now we're going to take a look at each one of these. So let's first, we're going to cast the pickup, or the object, the actor, to a pickup. So grab the object and cast it to a pickup, and if that works, so if test pickup does not equal null, it will be null if it's not if the cast fails. So if it's not null, that means the cast succeeded. Therefore we have a pickup. So if we have a pickup and the test pickup is pending kill, this would determine if it is pending kill. Let's throw the not in front of that. Not, and if it is not about to die or pending kill or invalid. And finally, if it is actually active. If all of that is true, then we're going to go in here and let's go ahead and throw this comment up there. Then what we're going to do is handle collecting it. Later on we'll do a few other things, but for now we're just going to collect it. And in that case, we're going to go ahead and write, this was the temporary implementation we developed previously that, as I said, is not going to hold, but it is the way it's written previously, so you may have already seen this, and so we're just going to leave it for just this one last video. And we will deactivate it. So let's set active false. Okay, that's all we need to do for that. And now let's just do a quick review. What is happening is the client, we click the button and the client is going to call, oh, we click the button. Good point. We need to actually add the button handling. So let's go up here in our, where we set up our player input, we're going to handle collecting pickups. So let's grab our input component and bind action. This is going to be collect pickups. Pass in this. The function we want to call is a NMP game character collect pickups. That's it. Okay. Alright, so we will actually go in the editor and set the key associated with this event because, oh whoops, we need to handle the, it needs to be the pressed event. There we go, sorry about that. So we are going to bind a key to, when you press the key, it'll call this event collect pickups. And that collect pickups event calls the aptly named collect pickups function. And then what happens is that collect pickups function then sends the request over the wall, over the network to the server and says, hey server, please do me some pickup collection action. And the server says, okay, first of all, let me make sure that's valid. And in our case, just always returns true. Then it goes directly to the implementation. And in the implementation, we go and we get all of our overlapping actors, we check them out. If they are a pickup, then we check to see if they're not about to be killed, or in other words, they are valid, and if they're active, and then we're going to do the collecting, which this is the part that's going to change, and we deactivate them. The squigglies, I need to, since we're actually using this thing, we need to include the header now that we're using the pickup. Okay, let's zip back down there. Okay, let me just do a test compile here. Right-click build. Okay, so assuming this works, we've done everything we needed to do in this video. So we've got the character side working, and with the exception of this was collected call, because as you'll see in the next video, that isn't going to work for us. So in the next video, we're actually going to go and handle the pickup side of this to handle being collected. So I will